And let's go ahead and have announcements.
Daniel Trout for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Ryan Turman for respondent's father, Mr. Goodiness. I'm present. My client is not ready, or is not present.
I'm Tate Eldridge. I represent the mother, Giselle Carrillo, in both cases. I'm present, ready. Probably not gonna. Oh, there she is. No, that's not. I'm sorry. She's not gonna show up. I thought she was popping in there. Never mind. She's probably not gonna be here.
Lorene Lucero on behalf of the father, Eduardo Lozano Reyes, present and ready.
Stacy Zabala on behalf of the boys, here and ready.
My understanding is y'all actually went to mediation and I guess made some agreements, but we were needing the mom to sign off and she hasn't done so. Is that right, Tate?
So, Your Honor, we mediated, settled it. She signed off on it, agreed to everything. She knew full well what she was doing. We did that on Friday, the 31st. We set it up for her to come in Monday. What was that? The 2nd, I guess. I don't have a calendar, but whatever the following Monday was at 11 a.m. and she didn't show up, and we've not been able to reach her by email or telephone since then. We were able to reach her by email before that, but we sent her a letter on the 11th of April asking her to contact me, and I haven't gotten a response to anything.
Okay, and Kimber, you might give us an update of what's going on currently.
Sure. I have not actually had contact with her as well. I did attempt to contact her in April. I was informed that she's not in the US anymore, but I don't have clarification on that. Really no update for her, just that I haven't been able to contact her since after mediation either.
And with respect to the fathers, any contact with them or the father?
No contact with David Godinez. I believe at the beginning of the case, I was told that he was in Mexico as well. I haven't been able to clarify that. Eduardo Lozano, he is placement for his child Xavier, and I see him monthly with his child. Great, does great for him, takes care of all of his needs, all of those things. So he's very active.
Lacey, anything to add on behalf of the kiddos?
The kiddos are both doing well. I second the commentary about Mr. Lozano. He's doing wonderful with his son. And you know, we thought we had it all worked out for mediation, and I absolutely believe the kids should stay right where they are.
Remind me, the other child, Jonathan, is he with an aunt and uncle?
Yes.
And that's here locally?
No.
Oh.
Midland, I believe. I always get it wrong. It's either Odessa and I say Midland, or Midland and I say Odessa. I confuse myself on it.
He's in Odessa.
Thank you.
And we feel like that placement's still appropriate and everything's going good?
Yes.
Judge,
So,
I'm sorry to interject. I think we may need a finding of good cause to conduct this over Zoom rather than in person.
Yes, I believe so too, Your Honor.
oh, okay. And I'm not familiar with that because it is a contested matter, I guess.
Well, and some of the rules changes here recently in the last couple of months. But yes, sir, a good cause that nobody's objected to having this over Zoom.
Just for clarity's sake, anybody object to having this hearing over Zoom?
Mother,
No, Your Honor.
Okay,
Your
I'll
Honor.
order that that's a necessity and that we'll proceed not at the courthouse, but by Zoom.
Thank you.
With regard then, I assume that well, let me let the lawyers for the dads weigh in. Ryan, anything you'd like to add on behalf of your client?
No, Judge, I've never been able to locate my client. It's my memory. I'm sorry, I don't have the report in front of me. It's my memory that he may even be out of the country. So I've had no contact with him at all.
Okay.
And
then,
in fact, didn't participate in mediation for that reason.
okay. Ms. Lucero?
Your Honor, again, my client's present. We're hoping to get this wrapped up today. The child's been with him during the pendency of this case, and we're just here hoping to get it wrapped up and ask for a last name change for the child, but that's what we're hoping to happen today.
Okay, very good. Well, at this point, do you all want to call witnesses, have me swear people in?
Yes, sir. I think we need to go ahead and prove up grounds, Your Honor.
Okay, why don't I have anybody that's going to testify raise their right hands? And Mr. Lozano, do you have the ability to turn on your video? There we go. And so I'm going to swear you in, Eduardo. And I imagine Kimber's going to testify. Who else are we going to have?
Mr. Khan.
Oh, Mr. Chacon. Okay. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. Very good. And the department may then call its first witness.
We'd call Maria Chacon, yeah. And
Okay.
how are you employed?
I'm an investigator for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
And are you familiar with the case involving the Godinez and the Carrillo child?
Yes, sir.
And how are you familiar with that case?
I was the investigator on the case.
Okay. How did the department become involved in the case with these children?
We received a report, I believe it was April 29th of last year, regarding the children.
Okay. And what was that report in regards to?
The report was regarding the children being left alone by their mother for an extended period of time, as well as concerns of her involvement with her ex-boyfriend, Eric Olguin.
Okay. And concerns with possible ex-boyfriend, what was the concern there?
The concern that she was still involved with him and having him around the children, despite his violent nature.
Okay. And he and her had a violent past, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was he supposed to be around them or around the mother?
He was not.
And then you said that was there any type of case open through CPS involving the mother and these children before this report came in?
Yes, sir. Before I got involved, she was involved with family-based safety services.
Okay. And that's a service that is used to prevent the removal of children and to have the parents work services?
Yes, sir.
Was she actively working those services when this case got started?
When I first got involved, I was informed that she was making limited progress with her service plan.
Okay. And the reports coming in through your investigation, it involved the children being left at home.
Yes, sir.
How old were the children?
Jonathan, I believe, was 9 and Javi was 2 at the time.
Okay. Let me see. And you said Jonathan was 9. He was born in 15, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay. So he was 6, maybe 7. Just
I apologize. I'm not good at math.
No, you're good. Just to clarify, he was around 6 at the time.
Yes.
Okay. And was he constantly late for school?
He was.
Is that part of the issue?
Yes.
And he was found to be left at home without any supervision. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you ever able to speak to the mother in regards to this?
I was.
Okay. And could you tell us the mother's name?
Giselle Carrillo.
And what was did she have any explanation for this, or what was your conversation with her?
Her explanation was that she would leave the older child with a babysitter before she went to go work out of town, and would take Xavier with her to daycare.
Okay. So as far as primarily leaving a child by itself, it was the older child.
Yes, sir.
Was she expecting him to get himself ready for school?
She was.
And so he would come and go to school as he felt like, since there was no supervision?
Yes.
Is that essentially what was happening?
Yes, sir.
As far as Mr. Holguin being around, was he ever found at the house?
During my investigation, I found that he had been at the home on multiple occasions.
Okay. Was there any family at the time to take the children, or were they not at the point of taking the children?
No one in her family was able to take the children at the time.
Okay. Now, who was the father of Jonathan Godinez, the older child?
I was told it was David Godinez.
Okay. And he was pled in as an alleged father, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who is the father of the Carrillo kid?
Eduardo Lozano.
Okay. And he was originally pled in as alleged, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you able to speak with either one of the fathers?
I was able to speak with Eduardo. I was never giving any contact information for David.
Okay. And how did conversations with Eduardo, Mr. Lozano, go?
He was very adamant that he wanted to be there for his child and had tried on multiple occasions, but was denied by Giselle, and that there was also domestic violence in their relationship with each other.
And were those him against mother or mother against him in that situation?
Mother against him.
Are you aware of any cases that were filed against mother for assaulting father? Mr. Lozano,
I'm not aware, I'm sorry.
you're not aware of those, okay. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to offer up a few exhibits. I sent these out prior. There was exhibits number 2 through 6, all relate to an assault domestic violence case, as the mother of the defendant against Mr. Lozano. And exhibits 7 through 10 are exhibits regarding an aggravated assault case against mother in relation to Mr. Lozano as the victim. And Your Honor, just for the court's knowledge on that, exhibit number 6 and exhibit number 10 are motion to proceeds that have been filed against mother as of this March to proceed with adjudication of guilt on both of those cases.
I will take judicial notice of those pending matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Khan, at that time, due to mother not being compliant with her family-based services and leaving the children alone, you believe that was presenting possible physical or mental harm to the children?
Yes, sir.
And did the department determine to remove the kids at that point?
Yes, sir.
And do you believe that was in the best interest of the children?
Yes, sir.
Did where were the children placed at that time?
At that time, Jonathan was placed into foster care, and Xavier was placed with his father.
Okay, so Xavier's still with his father, so he has been placed with his father throughout this whole case. Is that correct? To your
Yes, sir.
knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After the removal, your involvement in this case kind of stopped at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Once the removal was approved. Okay. While you were still on the case, after they were placed in their respective placements, how were the children doing?
The children were both doing good in their placements.
They adapted well to being placed in separate spots.
Yes, sir.
And again, the department does believe that was that removal was in the best interest of the children to keep them safe, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Very good. The department may call its next witness.
Thank you, Maria. We'd call Kimber Thomas, Your Honor.
All right, Ms.
And
Thomas.
Ms. Thomas, how are you employed?
I'm a permanency specialist with St. Francis Ministries.
And are you familiar with the cases involving the 2 children we're speaking of today?
Yes,
And how are you familiar with that?
I am their primary worker.
Okay. And how long have you been the primary worker on this case?
I got this case in end of September of 2022.
So during the course of this case, were you able to, or let me back up, I'm sorry. Were you able to review the exhibits that I sent out?
Yes,
And could you look at exhibit number 1 and tell me what that is?
that is the family plan of service.
And who is that a family plan of service for?
That is for Giselle Correa.
And have you been able to review this exhibit?
Yes,
And is it an accurate copy?
it is.
And did you notice any changes or anything to it?
I don't think so. I believe it's all still the same.
Can you tell us what family plans of service are?
It is a document that we create to assist the parents in working services based off of their needs throughout the case. And at the status hearing, that is typically made a court order.
Okay. And was this family plan of service filed with the court?
Yes,
Was it made an order of the court?
yes,
Your Honor, I'd like to, at this time, admit exhibit number 1, the family plan of service for Giselle Correa as an exhibit number 1. Kimber, did Miss Giselle work any of the services?
she began a few. The only service that she completed was the OSAR assessment, and that was after missing 2 appointments.
Okay. At the end of doing the OSAR, was there any recommendations that she complete anything?
Yes, she was recommended to do the intensive outpatient program through daily recovery services.
Okay. And did she complete that?
She did not.
What other services was she required to do through the family plan?
She was required to do a parenting class through Padre. She completed 2 parenting out of 12 classes. She was also scheduled for the drug education class, and she completed 1 of those. I did talk to her. I believe this was on an amended plan, but I spoke to her about doing rational behavior therapy and got her referred for that class, and she never completed that or got set up for that. She didn't begin her domestic violence support group or her WAVE program. The WAVE program was court ordered. And so I set her up for that, but she did not complete that. And she didn't do any therapy as well.
Okay. So essentially out of, we'll say 6 different services, she did 1 service
Right,
and did not follow up with the rest,
correct.
and only partially did parent.
Right.
Okay. When was your last contact with the mother?
I attempted to call her on the 14th of April and wasn't able to get in contact with her. My last contact where she responded to me was the 27th of March.
Okay. And what was that conversation?
Short-lived. She requested my email and I sent it to her.
Okay. And did you ever receive an email from her?
I received an email from the WAVE program that she did the intake, and on that intake, it was kind of like what her classes would be and when she would need to do those. But that's the last that I heard from anything.
Okay. And to your knowledge, she never followed up with that?
She did not.
Now, during the course of your case, or course of this case, did have you had a chance to speak with David Godinez?
I have not.
Have you ever been able to locate Mr. Godinez?
I have not.
What about Mr. Lozano?
Yes, I've had regular contact with Mr. Lozano.
Okay. And how is Mr. Lozano doing?
Really well. He has placement for his child and he takes care of all of his needs. Xavier has excelled tremendously living with him. He loves being there. It's great care on his half.
Okay. Now, get back to a couple of things on the mother real quick. Mother was revoked and sent to, or had a revocation filed and was sent to ISF program. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when did she get out of that program?
February of this year.
And when did she go into that program?
So she was incarcerated throughout the life of the case. She was in county jail since July of 2022, I believe. And I believe November is whenever she was officially transferred, November or December. And she was supposed to serve 3 months of that.
And Your Honor, as far as exhibits number 5 and number 9 that were already admitted into evidence, just ask the court to take judicial notice. Those are the orders extending the deferred adjudication and adding ISF as a condition of mom's probation at that time.
The court will take judicial notice of both of those matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Kimber, did mom have any driving while intoxicated cases?
Yes.
Has she been convicted on those that you know of?
I believe so.
Judge, I'd also like to admit exhibits number 11 through 17. Those are certified copies of documents for a DWI with a child under 15 involving the child Jonathan Godinez. That was out of Randall County. It also includes through 11 through 16 the indictments, judgments, probation orders, the motion to revoke, a second motion to revoke, and a capious warrant that sets no bond.
I will then admit exhibits 11 through 17 and also take judicial notice of that court file.
Thank you, Your Honor. And just for the court, on exhibit number 17 is a misdemeanor DWI out of Potter County where mom was also revoked and eventually can final conviction on that one.
The court will take judicial notice of that proceeding as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Thomas, after mom got out of ISF in, you said February?
Yes.
Did she have another run-in with law enforcement at that time?
She did in March.
Okay. And what was that?
A DWI.
And do you know what county that was in? Was that Potter, Randall County? Do you know, are you familiar?
I'm sorry, I'm not off the top of my head.
Okay. Judge, I'd also ask to admit exhibits number 18 and 19. That is the complaint for DWI Third or More and a PR bond for the DWI Third or More out of Potter County.
Any objection?
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Your Honor, it's not, I have to object on behalf of the mother. It's not a final conviction, so I object based on that. It's a charge at this point.
Okay, and I think that would go to the weight and not the admissibility. I'll overrule that objection and admit exhibits 18 and 19.
Thank you, Your Honor. And now, Ms. Kimber, there, as was brought up, it is simply a charge at this time, not a conviction. She has not gone to court on this. Is that correct?
Correct, as far as I know.
Okay. Now, is the department today asking to terminate the parental rights of the mother based on failure to work services and based on mother, according to these court documents and these convictions and the new case that's possibly pending, that mother has not changed her behaviors?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you believe that the mother, if the child were to be returned to the mother, would possibly create a dangerous environment for the mother, for the child, I mean, or children?
Yes.
And so we're asking the court to terminate the parental rights of the mother as to Jonathan Godinez and Xavier Carrillo. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. As to the father, Eduardo Lozano, the child has been with him throughout the case. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the child is, as you said a while ago, thriving and doing well.
Yes.
Are we asking that the father, Eduardo Lozano, receive sole managing custody or conservatorship of that child?
Yes.
And mother's rights to be terminated?
Correct.
Now, as far as the Godinez child, you said you have not had any contact with father. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are you familiar that they are aware of a paternity registry search being run?
Yes.
And do you know, did that come back as a not having a father register with the paternity registry?
Yes.
Do you know when that was?
July 22nd of 2023. That may be 2022.
Document. Judge, I'd ask that exhibit number 21, which is the certificate of paternity registry search done through the Texas Health and Human Services, be admitted as showing that no parent has registered as a father. Thank you. Now, Ms. Thomas, was a family planning service also generated for Mr. Godinez?
Yes.
Was that ever served to him, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. He's unable to be located.
Is the department asking today, in regards to Jonathan Godinez, that the rights of the alleged father, David Godinez, be terminated based on failure to register with the paternity registry search?
Yes.
And in the alternative that he has not worked any services at this time?
Right.
And that we have not been able to locate or find him?
Correct.
And also terminate the parental rights of the mother?
Yes.
Where is the child right now? Who is he placed with?
Jonathan is with his maternal aunt and uncle in Odessa, Texas.
Are they a adoption motivated placement?
Yes.
Are they licensed yet, or are they working on getting licensed?
They're not licensed yet, but they have begun the process.
Okay. And they are wanting to adopt through the department. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are we asking today that both parents' rights be terminated and for the department to be named permanent managing conservator of the child, Jonathan Godinez?
Yes.
And that the placement continue with the aunt and uncle?
Yes.
And for both of these children, terminating the mother's parental rights in both cases, terminating the parental rights of David Godinez as to Jonathan Godinez, and giving sole managing of Xavier to Eduardo Lozano, that is all in the best interest of the children?
Yes.
And of each child?
Yes.
And we believe that the Xavier is in as good a place and is being looked after and is in a great place with his dad at this time?
Yes.
And as far as Jonathan, that he is in a good place and thriving with the aunt and uncle?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Ms. Zavala?
Ms. Thomas, would St. Francis or the department have any concerns or objections to changing Xavier's name to match his father's?
I don't have any objection or concern with that.
And both Mr. Lozano and placement for Jonathan, is it correct that they know each other, they talk, they cooperate in getting the boys together whenever possible?
Yes.
And so naming the department permanent managing conservator of Jonathan allows aunt and uncle to finish that process of getting licensed so they can then go on and adopt.
Correct.
So once they've finished that process and it's all cleared for adoption, then there will be a separate adoption proceeding in the department, and St. Francis will no longer be involved.
Yes, after adoption is consummated.
I pass witness.
Mr. Eldridge,
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Terman.
Judge, actually, sorry to do this. If I might ask for a brief recess and be allowed to join the attorneys in a breakout room?
Oh, absolutely. I'll have Rachel do that. You want to meet with all the lawyers?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Thomas, I don't want to belabor it. I know you testified that you weren't provided any contact information for Mr. Godinez, but I do just want to double back a little bit. Were you given any information at all about where you might be able to locate him?
I was not. I did just double check our program that we have to see if there was a phone number for him. I contacted that number before one time, and it's not a working number. It's a Amarillo number. But other than that, that's the only thing that I have.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Eldridge.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I don't have any questions for Ms. Thomas. However, when it comes back around to me, there's a couple of things I'd like to clarify on the record.
Okay. Sure. Don't let me forget to give you the opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-up redirect?
Couple, Your Honor. Ms. Thomas, I know you don't hands-on deal with this service, but were you aware if Mr. Godinez was ever served?
I'm not aware.
Your Honor, we would just ask, Mr. Godinez was never served by personal service or publication. Under section 161.002 of termination of an alleged father, as Mr. Godinez was pled in, subsection C1, for termination of an alleged father, there is no requirement to serve by personal or publication of the alleged father, no requirement to identify or locate if he has not registered with the paternity registry. So I want to call the court's attention to that. That's what we're going after on Mr. Godinez on this case.
Okay, and I will take judicial notice of the court's file and also of that statute.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas, real quick. Now, Mr. Lozano was pled in as an alleged father originally, correct?
I believe so.
And are you aware of that he took a paternity test on his own?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me, let me back up. The department also asking that we would adjudicate Mr. Lozano as the father of Xavier Curio based upon the paternity test that was done.
Yes.
And Your Honor, we'd ask that you take judicial notice of the paternity test that was filed with the court. I believe it was filed on March 6th of 23. I don't believe he's ever been adjudicated at this point, so we would be asking also that he be adjudicated. And
We'll take judicial notice of that test.
thank you, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
Any follow-up from anybody?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Department of arrested this time, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Ms. Zavala, would you like to call any witnesses?
Your Honor, I don't believe I have any witnesses to call. I believe Mr. Lozano's attorney may make a motion for change of name. I would second that motion as well. And if at some point we need to take any testimony on that, we can. But at this point, I don't believe I've got any witnesses.
Okay, and if it hasn't been pled, I certainly would allow y'all to make a trial amendment at this time and seek that relief. Mr. Eldridge, do you have any additional witnesses?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
And Mr. Terman, any additional witnesses?
No, Judge, I'd rest and close.
Okay, Mr. Reyes, and you're the father of Xavier Elias Carrillo, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you've heard all the testimony here today?
Yes.
Okay, and are we asking the court to grant your request for a name change for Xavier from Xavier Elias Carrillo to?
Correct.
Okay, and you understand that if the mother's rights are terminated, that you will be named as the sole managing conservator of Xavier, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's what you're asking the court that it do?
Yes.
Okay. I have no further questions, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
Good. Mr. Trout, any questions?
Sorry, Your Honor. Mr. Lozano, Ms. Lucero may have asked you this. You are wanting to be adjudicated as the father, is that correct?
Correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor. The department would just ask, Your Honor, as we stated in our testimony, that the parental rights of the mother, Giselle Carrillo, be terminated as to the children, both children in this case, based upon failure to work services and ongoing continuing danger to the children due to mother's conduct in criminal past at that time. We'd also ask that, based upon 161.002, that the father, David Godinez, or alleged father, David Godinez's rights be terminated, and that the department be given permanent managing conservatorship, that placement would stay with the aunt and uncle where the Jonathan Godinez is currently placed. We would ask that the father, Eduardo Lozano, be awarded sole managing custody of Xavier, that he be adjudicated the father, and in that case that the department would be dismissed out at that time.
Let me ask, it just occurred to me, and I should ask this before we rested and closed. I know in a normal situation, let's say it's a property division or something, the court can enforce the agreement reached at mediation. That hasn't been presented as evidence, or an exhibit at least. I don't know if that changes when we're talking about the termination of parental rights, but would it be proper for the court to also consider the mother's agreement to that?
I'm not sure that it would, just for the fact that we did reach a mediation and she didn't complete her part of it. Of course, that mediation settlement agreement was subject to her relinquishing. Since she did not, then I don't know that it'd be proper in that point, Your Honor.
Okay, that's probably true, and just to be on the safe side. Ms. Zavala, I'll let you go next.
Your Honor, it is my recommendation that the relief requested by St. Francis be granted. I do believe that that is in both children's best interest. I'd like to thank Mr. Lozano. He's done a fabulous job throughout the course, and I am grateful for both placements.
Very good. Ms. Lucero?
Your Honor, my audio is going in and out. We would just ask the court to grant the adjudication of Mr. Lozano as Xavier's father, and of course, in agreement that he be named sole managing conservator, that the mother's rights be terminated, and the child's name be changed to Xavier.
Judge, based on my inability to ever locate Mr. Godinez, I've really got nothing to add, so I would waive my argument.
Very good. Now, I don't want to put you in a position of having to advocate for something you don't have any basis of, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And, Mr. Eldridge?
You know, I don't have a client, so I don't really have anything either. I'll do the same. I'll waive.
Okay, very good. Well, based upon that evidence and testimony, I will grant the relief sought. First of all, I will adjudicate Mr. Lozano as the father of Xavier. I will grant a name change to Xavier. I will name Eduardo Lozano as the permanent managing conservator of Xavier. I will dismiss the department out of Xavier's case. Will terminate the parental rights of Giselle Carrillo with regard to Xavier, and find that those matters are in Xavier's best interest. In the Godinez case, I will name the department as the permanency managing conservator. I will continue Jonathan's placement. I find that to be a good placement and in his best interest. I will terminate the rights of Giselle Carrillo and David Godinez as requested. And hopefully on down the line, the aunt and uncle will be able to finalize that adoption process. Eduardo, I too want to add my thanks to you. You really stepped up to the plate here and been a great dad and done everything that we've asked you to do and everything that's been in Xavier's best interest. And he's very lucky to have a father like you. And I know you're lucky to have him too. And I just wish you guys continued success. And I hope we'll get to hear good stories about Xavier as he grows up and becomes a man and has you as a good example of what a man ought to be.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else I need to attend to?
Your Honor, if we could, just for the record's sake, are we terminating mom on the O grounds for failure to work services? Is that just so
Yes.
it's on record? Okay.
Yes.
And best interest of the children.
And best interest and terminating the father for failure to register in the registry.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, guys.
A dead item's released.
And, sorry.
Yes,
Just for the record also, I believe Ms. Zavala would stay on the Godinez case.
Yes.
All court appointed and department would be released on the Carrillo case.
correct.
Right.
And let's go ahead
All
and have
right, thanks, y'all.
announcements.
Thank you, Judge. Good to see you.
Daniel Trapper, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Kenny for the mother, Kimberly Siciata. She's supposed to be present, but she's having technical difficulties.
Stacey Zabala on behalf of Zayden.
I'm sorry, but I do have some notes from a communication with Mrs. Siciata, so hopefully this will limit testimony, but she is in agreement to work services and for the department to have TMC.
Okay.
Great.
And Your Honor, if in light of that, we'll just need to take I believe, a little bit of testimony as regards to the two possible fathers. There's a presumed and an alleged on this. Since neither one
Okay.
are attorneys, and I don't believe either one's here. Are you familiar with the case involving, and how are you familiar with that name?
I received a case on April 9th, 2023.
Okay. And were you able to make contact with the mother?
Yes,
Did she tell you, now we just heard an announcement that they're agreeing as far as the mother, so we'll talk about the fathers, or possible fathers. Did you get a chance to speak with either Christopher Sesteta or Charles Goody?
I did speak with Christopher for a short period of time.
And he and the mother, Kimberly, they are still legally married, is that correct?
Correct.
And so he has pled into this case as a presumed father due to the legal marriage.
Correct.
Did he say anything as far as whether he was or was not the father?
He said he was not the father.
Okay. He does understand that they are still legally married, and that is why he's in this case.
Yes.
But he does not believe he is the father.
Yes.
Were you able to talk to Kimberly during this case, your investigation?
Yes.
And did she tell you who she thought was the father?
Charles Gordy.
Were you ever able to get in touch with Charles?
No.
Did she tell you where he hung out?
Yes, he's homeless. He hangs out at that Yes convenience store on 3rd Street and behind H&R Block on McMaster's.
Okay. Did you ever have a phone number for him, or does he have a phone?
He doesn't have a phone.
Okay. But up to this point, you have not been able to track him down to speak with him about the case.
No.
And at this point, he would just be an alleged father. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. In light of the agreement with Mr. Ano's client, the mother, Kimberly, and the presumed father saying that he does not believe he is the father and not being able to get in touch with the alleged father, Charles Goody, is the department asking for a temporary managing conservatorship of the child, Zayden, as a relative?
Yes.
And do you believe that that is in the best interest of the child?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Sharon.
Ms. Zavala?
Ms. Amos, are you aware that both Mr. Goody and Ms. Sestacia had another child who was removed previously?
Yes.
Do you know, was there any communication with the family who was placement for that child, the previous child, as to being placement for this one?
Yes, when I sent the placement request, they contacted that family and they thought it over for a little while, and apparently they said they couldn't do it.
Okay. I pass witness.
Ms. Nerano?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. The department may call its next witness.
No more witnesses, Your Honor.
Ms. Zavala, do you have any recommendations as the headline item?
Yes, Your Honor. I would recommend that the department be named temporary managing conservator of Zayden. I do believe that's in the best interest of the child. Doing very well in placement. I do recommend that placement continue. And I believe that should cover everything.
Kendra, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Well, based on the evidence and testimony, then I do find it is in the child's best interest to name the department as temporary managing conservator, also to continue the child's placement. And I will approve the mother's agreement to participate in services. Normally, I suppose we would talk to the mom about the services and that kind of thing. Does she just need to get in contact with Ms. Amos?
After this hearing, Your Honor, it'll be turned over to St. Francis. They will begin working on visitation stuff, getting family plans of service generated, and they will discuss that with the mother. So once they make contact with her again, they will start those proceedings.
Okay, great. And then do we set anything in stone as far as a future hearing?
Yes, sir. The next hearing, which will be the status hearing, is set for June 6th on a 9 o'clock docket.
Okay, very good. And all right, I appreciate everybody here and appreciate the mom making that agreement. And do I need to appoint anybody at this point for Mr. Goody?
Point, Your Honor. I think if we get further into the case to where if we get to termination or something, maybe at that point, if no contact's been made, but he has not been served yet and hasn't had a chance to ask for an attorney yet.
Okay.
Thank you for stepping in today. I've enjoyed you thoroughly.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Not very many people enjoy my presence, so it's nice when somebody does.
No, I think you've been great. I appreciate it.
Well, it's, like I told some people before, I always just had this great fear of these kinds of cases because I never handled them. And then come to find out they're almost exactly like my drug court, where you're just trying to help people and you got lots of services and resources to do it. And I think it's a joy.
Yes, sir. I enjoy Judge Baker too, because she may run back and watch this and I want her to know that, but
Well, she may be on her vacation. She's probably logging in and watching right now. She gave me lots of instructions.
oh, well, I know she knew you were going to do a good job. She
I
told
don't know if you know this, but I was married to her at one time, so I'm used to getting instructions from her.
That was actually the first time I heard your name. I ran into Carrie and Jack tailgating at a tech game when I was in law school and hung out with them for a little bit and heard y'all were married before.
Well, the good thing is she and I and Jack have remained good friends all these years, and
I remember them saying
didn't
that.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
makes things easier. We're
It
good friends
does.
with my oldest daughter's mom and her husband. So
I've always thought if we'd had any kids, that we'd be the kind of people that would all take a vacation together,
yes.
Mm-hmm.
We've done birthdays and
Hey,
Christmas
Johnson,
and all
we're,
sorts of stuff together.
here on a adversary hearing, and please make your announcements.
Daniel Trout for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
Sorry, Ryan Turman on behalf of respondent mother. Sorry, I know it was John Angel White. I am present. I was made aware of the appointment yesterday morning. I attempted to call her at the number she provided on her application for an attorney. I was not able to. I sent her a text message at that same number, and so far I have no response.
Very good.
Stacy Zavala on behalf of the child.
Okay, and Daniel, are you going to need to put on some testimony?
Yes, sir. I'll be calling Amy. And Ms. Bailey, how are you employed?
I'm an investigator with the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services.
And how are you familiar with that case?
I'm the investigator on the case.
And how did the department become involved in this case?
We received a report on April 14th with allegations of neglectful supervision.
And what were those allegations based on?
Hearsay.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I was objecting to the hearsay.
Oh, overruled.
That the allegations were that the parents were seeking treatment through a midwife rather than the hospital due to legal issues, and the legal issues possibly being drug related.
Okay. During your investigation, who did you determine were the parents?
Angel White and Ronnie Johnson Jr.
Okay. Have you been able to meet or speak with either one of the parents?
I have.
And when was that?
On April 17th.
Okay. Now, how did your conversation go with the parents?
When I spoke to them, they both denied any drug use and stated that they had everything that they needed for the baby.
Okay. And when you say denied drug use, was there drug testing done at the birth?
There was.
And were those results concerning?
Objection. Her answer would be predicated on hearsay. The drug results or a business record. It's not been on file with an affidavit.
I'll rephrase. Did you receive a call from the mother on April 24th?
Yes.
And what was her question at that time?
She wanted to know why the paperwork stated neglectful supervision. And I explained that her testing positive at the birth results in neglectful supervision of the child due to her meth use. And she stated that that wasn't on the paperwork.
Okay. Did, when you advised her that, did she seem surprised?
No.
Were you able to meet face to face with the parents?
Yes.
Did you go over reasons for removal, the paperwork and everything with them?
Yes.
Okay. Did the father at the time, has he agreed to the department having TMC at this time?
Yes.
Did he sign that agreed order?
Yes.
Now I know that mother asked for an attorney. Did she also sign but asked for an attorney at the time?
Yes.
Was she advised that she could have an attorney prior to signing?
Yes.
Okay. And she elected to sign and to ask for an attorney?
Yes.
Okay. Where is the baby placed right now?
With a paternal aunt here in Amarillo.
Okay. And so baby was removed but was placed with family?
Yes.
And how is the baby doing at this time?
She's doing well.
Due to the concerns of alleged drug use, baby allegedly being born positive, does the department remove for those reasons?
Yes.
Objection presumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled. Oh, go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
That the baby was born positive. There's no evidence that the baby was born positive. Any such evidence would have to rely on a drug screen, which again would be hearsay and not admissible at this time.
I'll sustain that objection.
Do the department believe that it was in the best interest of the child to remove at that time?
Yes, sir.
And did the department believe that there were circumstances that the circumstances surrounding the beginning of this case warranted that removal?
Yes, sir.
How is the child doing now?
She's doing well in her placement.
Okay. And do y'all believe that it was in the best interest of the child to remove at that time?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Bailey, just to be clear, your conversation with Ms. White was her asking why the child had been removed?
No, I explained that the child had been removed and had the notice of removal with me, as well as the paperwork. She was in the hospital at the time and was pretty out of it. So when she was released from the hospital, she looked over the paperwork, and that's when she called me on the 24th.
Okay. And you responded to her that it was based on drug usage, but she did not admit or confess to using drugs. Is that right?
Not the first time I met with her.
Did she subsequently confess to using drugs?
She told me that she was using Adderall, a friend's prescription of Adderall.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Bailey, did you have any conversations with Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he make any statements about his drug use?
He did not to me, but he did to my acting supervisor a few days later.
Who was that supervisor?
Melody Zuniga.
When you get an investigation such as this one, who do you speak with? What do you do to investigate a situation like this?
We speak with hospital staff. We speak with any relatives that we're able to get in contact with, as well as the parents.
At the time that the baby was removed, where were the parents living?
They live in the Westminster Apartments.
Was mom currently there, or was she in the hospital?
She was in the hospital.
Was she in a position to take care of the child at the time of removal?
No, ma'am.
And do Mr. Johnson and Ms. White live together?
Yes.
Did the statements that Mr. Johnson made about drug use come before removal?
Yes.
I would object to that last question and answer. Ms. Bailey testified that she did not speak with Mr. Johnson about his drug usage. Any conversation about that would have been with her supervisor. There's no testimony that she's relying on an official government report in this testimony. I would object that it's hearsay, that she doesn't have personal knowledge.
When she testified without objection to the conversation, I think this just puts it in context. So that would go to the weight, not the admissibility, and I'll overrule the objection.
Were you the one that met with Ms. White and Mr. Johnson to go over the proposed order that was signed?
Yes.
At that time, did you talk to Ms. White and Mr. Johnson about their ability to attend this hearing today?
Yes.
Did you provide them the link to this hearing?
Ms. White said that she would send me her email address that I could provide the link to, and I've not heard from her.
But she knew the hearing was scheduled for today.
Yes, ma'am.
Did she have all the information that she needed in order to contact you?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the point that you had the agreed order, did she sign that?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Did you let her know that an attorney would be appointed for her?
Yes, ma'am.
And at the time she filled out that paperwork, you wouldn't have had Mr. Terman's name, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But she knew she could contact you to get his info?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she know that an attorney would be reaching out to her?
Yes, ma'am.
At this point, after your investigation that included speaking with the parents, the hospital staff, any and all relatives, do you believe that it would be safe for the child to go to live with these parents right now?
I do not.
I believe placement is a paternal relative, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did mom and dad provide you that name?
They provided that name after initially speaking with them. And that's who they want the child placed with.
I pass the witness.
Ms. Bailey, I noticed in the report that was filed with the court that originally there might have been a little bit of a problem with getting follow-up medical care for the baby because of a Medicaid number. Did they get that straightened out?
Yes, sir. The baby was seen on Friday.
Okay. And at that report, as far as you know, was the baby in good health and reaching whatever standards that you'd expect the newborn to reach at that point?
Yes, sir. I called Texas Tech this morning. The baby's gaining weight, normal development. She's to go back in 2 weeks.
Good. Anybody have any follow-up questions?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your
Okay,
Honor.
the department may call its next witness.
Formal arrest, Your Honor.
Mr. Terman, do you have any witnesses you'd like to call?
I do not, Judge.
Ms. Zavala?
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted. No witnesses, Your Honor.
Do you have a recommendation as the ad litem to the court?
I do. It is my recommendation that Amelia, that the department be named temporary managing conservator of Amelia, and that her placement be continued. She is doing well, and I believe all of that is in her best interest.
I would mirror what Ms. Zavala just said. We would be asking for a temporary managing conservatorship based on agreement by dad from signature. Mom agreed, but also asked for an attorney. Child is placed with family and is doing well at this time. That we would have department temporary managing conservatorship placement stay where it is for the time being, and that mom and dad, neither one would be required to pay child support or medical support at this time. That would be withheld for a later date if that comes up here.
Okay, and Mr. Terman?
Judge, I guess in trying to break it down, as far as mom having signed the agreed temporary orders prior to her having counsel appointed, I don't know that I can speak to that. But from the evidence presented at this hearing, I think the only evidence that supports the department taking temporary managing conservatorship of this child is Ms. Bailey's opinion that it would be in the child's best interest. And it seems to me that entire opinion is predicated based on a confession of her using Adderall, at least is the only admissible evidence for that predicate. So I don't believe that there is enough evidence to show a continuing danger to this child based on any sort of abuse or neglect. Therefore, I would ask that the department's petition be denied.
Okay, well, based on the evidence and testimony before the court, I do believe that there is a continuing danger if the child were to be returned to the parents at this time. I do find it is in the child's best interest to name the department as the temporary managing conservator to continue the placement. And let me ask this, now that this hearing's been held, do we continue, I guess, to make efforts to contact the parents and set up a plan?
Yes, sir. It would go the same as last. We would make contact with them again. It would move over to St. Francis to set up visitations and to set up family plans and generate that and get them started working.
Okay. And I guess at some point, if the father changes his mind and wanted representation, then we could take that up then.
Yes, sir. He can always fill out the paperwork at any time during the ongoing case and ask for the attorney.
Okay, very good. Well, then I'll make those orders, and anything else we need to take care of?
Next hearing date would be June 15th set on a 9 o'clock docket.
Very good. Well, we'll get those settings and appreciate everybody's patience today. And I think we're done.
Thanks. And sorry, I know I said earlier I wasn't going to be a jerk, and then I thought better of it on the break and decided I should fight a little harder, especially since my client isn't here. So
I knew you were pulling our leg when you said it.
That's what I was about to say. We all knew it, Ryan.
I got a wild hair over that little break for me, and sorry, needed to get the poison out.
One of the nicer jerks we have to deal with.